Hey everyone, this is Gnogat, and today I wanted to talk about the new Fawn of the White Dragon that is releasing in Burst Protocol. So this is a powerful support card for Branded, but also for Dracotail, and I wanted to go into the Dracotail applications of this card. So I wanted to show you some combos, but also some tips on how to use this card. So let's hop right into it, shall we? So before we hop into combos, I wanted to talk about something important, and that is ratios. So you probably know that Fawn of the White Dragon is always treated as Fawn of Albaz. That means that you cannot run 3 of this, 1 of this. You have to run a sum of 3 of these cards. So of course, Fawn of the White Dragon is a very powerful card, so you are inclined to play 3, but the standard ratio in the OCG is 2 and 1 from what I've seen. And from my testing, I can say that I also enjoyed this ratio more than this, even though it is sometimes annoying if you have this card in your hand and you say it could be a Fawn of the White Dragon. But the applications in which this card comes up actually I think are important enough to make this concession. And let me just show you some examples. So let's say you are going first and you have this card, right? You activate it, you send the Albion as always, you summon it, activate the effect, and now your opponent activates Fuvalos, right? You will summon the Ecclesia because you already activated the effect. Your opponent gets 1 draw. Now, if you run 3 of this, this board does nothing, right? This can summon another Albaz, Fawn of White Dragon, in the opponent's turn, which does nothing. But if you want to actually end on something, you have to summon the Ecclesia, giving your opponent another draw. And then in the opponent's turn, this can summon the Cartesia. Whereas if you just leave this on the field, you can, in the opponent's turn, use this, summon the OG, discard a card, make Mirror Jade, and that's more disruptions for fewer draws. Keep in mind that you will probably also have Dracotail cards in hand, so you can just leave this on the board, do Dracotail combos, have some traps, and then you have the opportunity to make Emerald Jade on the opponent's turn. But also, if you are going second, let's say you have this card going second, activate it, you send the Albion, you play into your opponent's board. This threatens, right, because you summon this. So they kind of have to interact with this somehow, otherwise this can summon the OG Albaz. Again, if you don't run the OG Albaz, this is not a threat. This can summon Cartesia, maybe, but even if you go over the Ecclesia, by the way, put this in defense because it has to, the effect is to banish it and then summon. So if you activate the effect and they Dracotail Hornet, you don't get a summon. So just a small tip in the mirror, put this in def. But even then, if they pop this, you are ending on nothing, whereas this, you can activate this to get the Albaz, and they have to pop the Albaz then, but you still have the body left over, can make an Alba Lenatus, etc., etc. But what's also very important is if they somehow interact with all of this, you send this Albion for cost, right? So what you can do in the end phase is you can grab a Fawn and the Virtuous, use this, like you up, let's say you break a board, they have a half board, you go this, you get rid of whatever threatens the OG Albaz, and then because you send the Titanic Lad with the Fawn and the Virtuous, you can also summon the Albaz, and you make a Mirror Jade right here. So you get a lot of board breaking capabilities by just running this card, and this poses a bigger threat just because of that. So that's for me a big argument to run this card, and also the first turn combos where you use this, which I will show you right now. So let's hop into the first combo. So let's start with the first combo, which is Fawn of the White Dragon and a Dracotail name. In this case it's Pan, which is a dragon that is relevant for this line, but if you have Faimena and Lukias, then it's a different line. So let's just go with that because Pan is kind of a basic Dracotail to have. So it could also be Mululu, but we're going to use the Fawn of the White Dragon, send Albion, summon itself, and activate the effect to summon an Ecclesia from our deck. Then we are going to perform a Synchro Summon for the new Ecclesia and banish that one to summon Cartesia, which is our way of fusion summoning here. And you could make an Athalion with these two. But consider we are locked into level 8s. So if we are going to make an Athalion now, our Rahu also has to make an Athalion with no effect. So what I prefer doing here is, if this is a dragon, I'm going to fuse it with the Cartesia, and we're going to do Secretarian. Now the pan will set you a Dracotail card. You can set Ketu or Rahu. Both lines, I'm going to go over the Ketu line in a second, but for this line, let's go Rahu, and then after that, we can talk disadvantages and advantages. But for now, we're going to activate the Rahu, take a card of our hand and the Lukias, summon our Athalion, probably in the extra monster zone, and then you have Athalion target the Lukias, and the Lukias setting us a trap. We get back the Lukias, and we can summon the Lukias to grab a Faimena. And then we have the Secretarian left. So what we can do is we can revive the Cartesia, shuffling back our Fallen of White Dragon, and now we have our Cartesia back on the board. And also in the end phase, we are getting back our Ecclesia. Our Albion is going to set us Fallen and the Virtuous, and our Ecclesia is coming back here. So what you have here is Secretarian, which is good in the mirror. We have a way to fuse here. We have this, which can get us into Fallen of Albaz. And we have Fallen and the Virtuous. We have a trap of our choice. We have a Faimena in our hand. Now, if you have two ways to fuse, right? We have the Faimena and we have the Cartesia. So at any point where you fuse away your Lukias, you can also use Fallen the Virtuous to revive the Lukias, and that gets you a Dracotail name, which you can then fuse with the Faimena, because the Fallen the Virtuous can actually, if you have a Ecclesia on the field or graveyard, you can revive something. So this is a very minimal endboard for just having like a not great Dracotail name in our hand. But if you want to rewind it a bit, so we are back at the point where we made the Secretarian and we set a card, and this time we set the Ketu, and we're going to activate it to grab the Lukias. Then we can normal summon the Lukias, grab ourselves a Faimena, and use Faimena to fuse the Lukias with whatever we have in hand, and go into Athalion. Note that if you have multiple Charmies here, you can ditch another Charmy, so you can grab back the pan, but here, you just make the Athalion, and you are going to go Chain Link 1, Chain Link 2, right? Athalion target the Faimena, Chain Link 2 Lukias to set your Rahu now. Grab the Faimena, and then you go Rahu, fuse with an Urgula from your deck into a second Athalion, because that's the only target you have. So then you can set two traps, and you can use the Urgula, get back your Faimena, and then in the also, you can go Secretarian Dragon to, again, bring back your Cartesia. And in the end phase, you get your Ecclesia back, you get the other Ecclesia back, and you get a Fallen and the Virtuous. So this line makes you end on one more trap, and you have one more Athalion board. But you run through your Ketu, that is now in the graveyard, and you run through an extra Athalion. So it's a matter of what you value in that matchup, tempo by having more interactions, or just the grind game, for example, in the mirror. So let's go into Fallen of the White Dragon and Faimena, actually. So this time we don't have a dragon, but this is actually better. So we go White Dragon, we send Albion, summon it, and then you're going to activate the Albion, you know this part, and you're going to synchro for Ecclesia, which then summons you a Cartesia. Now you can use the Cartesia, and this time you actually make the Athalion. You use two cards from your hand, summon the Athalion, and then you use Faimena, and you use Athalion, you target the Faimena and whatever you want back. So let's say this is an actual hand trap, and then the Faimena is going to set you a Ketu, which you're then going to use to grab a Lukias. Then you go Lukias, and you grab Urgula, and then you can use the Faimena that you haven't used yet to summon, to fuse these two, which you also haven't used yet, and that is again a Secretarian Dragon. Now both of these trigger, getting you your two traps, and then you can use the Urgula to grab back your Faimena. And if you want, you can use the Secretarian to summon back the Lukias just to have a name on the board. But in the end phase, you're going to go and get back your Ecclesia, and you are getting the other Ecclesia, and you're going to get a Fallen and the Virtuous. So This time you haven't used the Rahu, and you only used one Arthalion, but you still end on double trap and all of this setup, which is really good. So for the last line with Fallen of White Dragon before we go into Branded Fusion is Fallen of White Dragon and Lukias. So if you open these both, what I recommend is normal summoning the Lukias using the effect to grab Faimena. Why is that? Because now we are going to continue by using the Fallen of White Dragon, sending Albion, summon itself, and use the effect to special from deck. This is the time where they would Fuvalos you, and because you grab the Faimena, you can chain the Faimena, fuse into your Dracotail monsters, set your traps, and you deny them one draw. Especially if you have multiple Dracotail names in hand, and it's not just Fuvalos, you can just do this, fuse with your Dracotails, Arthalion grab back your resources, your White Dragon will give them one draw by summoning Ecclesia, and you just end on Ecclesia for an Albaz, Fallen the Virtuous, your traps, and you gave them one draw. So very, very powerful into Fuva. But let's just keep on playing here without any Fuva. We get the Ecclesia, and we're going to Synchro Summon into Synchro Ecclesia. This is summon number 4, which is also very important because now this goes off the field. So at any point if they nib you, you still get this back. You will have the Albaz or a Cartesia in the opponent's turn. But here you're going to summon the Cartesia, and you are going to use it to fuse your 2 Dracotail names and go into Arthalion. Now Arthalion is going to target Faimena, and your Dracotail names are going to set you your traps. You grab back the Faimena, and from here you actually pass because you have played through basically all of the high impact hand traps, and in the end phase you actually get back your Ecclesia. Your hand is full, hopefully with some Dracotail names, and you will also get back the Albion, which gets you Fallen and the Virtuous, and you get back your Ecclesia for an Albaz in the opponent's turn. So now you have the Cartesia to fuse on your opponent's turn, you have the Ecclesia for Albaz, you have these 3, you have Faimena in hand, and you have only used one Arthalion, you have not used a Rahu, you have not used a Kitu. So what's really strong about this is if end of main your opponent is choosing to use a K9 or a Faimena, you have your own Faimena to counter that. And we have a Dragon and a Spellcaster, so against Dracotail you can make a Secretarion in that case, and against K9 you can make a Mysterion in that case, and you can just counter that play. Especially since the Cartesia that you fuse off will return to your hand in the end phase, so you're not even losing resources. And if you have another Dracotail name in hand that you haven't used, you can also, if your opponent decides to do something, like summon something on the board, then you can set yourself a Kitu, and that is another fusion spell. So you are very flexible with this while still setting up a strong layered end board. So that's why I wanted to show you the combo, but let's go into Branded Fusion. So let's go into the Branded Fusion line. This is just Branded Fusion with some monsters in your hand. So you're going to activate Branded Fusion, send Frixel and Fallen of White Dragon, which is Fallen of Albaz, and you summon Sanctifier Dragon. Then Frixel is going to trigger, getting you Kitu, which then gets you Lukias, normal summon Lukias, grab Faimena. If you have played Branded Dracotail before, this is just the standard line. There's no Fallen of White Dragon yet. Then you're going to use Faimena, you're going to fuse the Lukias with a card in your hand, and if you have a card to spare, that is not as important, then you use 2. And you go into Arthalion. Note that the more cards you use, the worse it is into Imperm. But the Arthalion can then target your Faimena and your White Dragon, while the Lukias will set you a Rahu. So now you grab these 2 back, and then you use the Rahu, using the Faimena and the Urgila to make Gulamel, which finally makes an appearance because we are not locked except for fusions. And then Urgila and Faimena will set you your 2 traps. And then you can use the Urgila to grab back your Faimena. And then you can use the Fallen of White Dragon, sending the Albion, summon it, use the effect, and special the Ecclesia. Now, in the end phase, you're going to also get the Fallen and the Virtuous on the field, and that is going to be the board. Very, very powerful, but I wanted to talk about something still. So you have this Fallen of White Dragon. We cannot synchro because we have Branded Fusion, but what you can do if you want to make space is you can just use these for Alba Lenados. Now, Albaz is a card that I wanted to talk about because of this card. This is a card that has been popping up in a lot of testing. This is an Omni Negate if you have a monster that's original attack or defense is 2500. That is your Arthalion. So this is very strong because in the mirror it can negate a fusion, and if you can't fuse in the mirror you cannot play. So people have been trying this out, and the thing is, if you have Fallen of White Dragon, you can activate it, special it, and you can just fuse with the opponent's Arthalion, which turns off their trap until the Arthalion comes back. So that is why Albaz is a card that I like, but also the counterplay to getting Albaz by your opponent would be to make your own Albaz or Sanctifier, because both of them have 2500 in their stat line, but both of them also cannot be used as fusion material. I checked the ruling, and the send fusion, the contact fusion of Albaz still is treated as fusion material. It's not a fusion summon, but it's still fusion material. Don't ask me why. But so if you play Dragon's Mind yourself, if you cannot make the Sanctifier, you can just make an Albaz, and that is safe from your opponent's Albaz. Also, another interaction is if you have an Arthalion that came back from the grave, that also cannot be used for Albaz, because Albaz has to send to the grave, but this is banished when it leaves the field, so it cannot be used for that contact fusion. So that is a small excursus into Dragon's Mind and Albaz, but generally I would like to end on something like this board from one branded fusion, and that is already pretty powerful. For the last line, we're going to have branded fusion plus a Dracotail name. In this case, it's Pan. And what you're going to do is you branded fusion for these two, of course, for your Sanctifier Dragon, and your Frixel is going to set you Kitu, which you grab Lukias with, normal Lukias, grab Faimena, use Faimena, fuse these two, and you actually go into Secretarian, and then your Lukias and Pan will trigger, getting you a trap and a Rahu. And then you can use the Secretarian to shuffle back a card. Let's say we shuffle back the Pan, and we summon the Frixel. Then the Frixel summons back the Faimena, puts it into your hand, and now we have the Faimena in hand, so now we can Rahu, use the Faimena, and oops, we use an Urgula to summon Arthalion, and now you have Arthalion targeting your Fallen of White Dragon, and you have your two triggers in the grave, which grabs you your two traps. Where do I have it? Here. So now you have 3 traps, and you get your Fallen of White Dragon back, which you can then use to ditch an Albion, summon itself, summon the Ecclesia, and again you can just make a Lenatos here to make up some space and to have a Dragon's Mind that would be untouchable, although you already have the Sanctifier Dragon. But in the end phase you're going to get a Fallen and the Virtuous in addition to all of this, and that is, don't forget to add back your Faimena, so shuffle back the Urgula, but that is going to be your board. So 4 cards in hand, 3 trap set, Fallen the Virtuous set, we have a Secretarian for the mirror, we have Sanctifier to revive, we have a way to go into Fallen of Albaz, and we have a Frixel that we can use as fusion material, and so on and so forth. And we only used one Dracotail fusion monster in our deck for that. So that is going to be it for the video. I hope you liked the combos. If you found a combo that is better while still playing well into hand traps, I get some comments about having stronger combos, and yes, I know they exist, but you also have to keep in mind that you can always make the board stronger, but you also have to consider what you are playing into and such. But I think these lines are pretty good for this deck, and the turn 1 ceiling has been upped quite significantly, which hopefully makes up for the hits on Kitu and Mululu, which weakens the going second capability of this deck. Although the Fallen of a White Dragon going second, if you run the OG Albaz, is also pretty decent. But enough rambling. Thanks for watching. Hope you leave a like, comment, or a sub, and I'll see you next time.